Thank you for joining us again, Aimee.
Oh, hello. I'm happy to be here.
So, first of all, I want to thank you for being willing to have this conversation with me. It has been hard to get people to have this conversation with me. I think, you know, people are trying to avoid this conversation to some degree because it is a complex conversation. People are trying to figure out as we go into 2024, what are we supposed to say?
Mm-hmm.
We have had at least 3 election cycles so far, even more. I mean, you could take it down to 2008, where there has been this big push, and particularly on the Democrat side, is what we're thinking about or looking at, or the more progressive, let me not associate with party, sort of the liberal to progressive side, right? There's been a big push. And then there's also been a big push on the conservative to fascist side, right? To get people to the polls and to get policymakers in that are going to pass certain types of legislation. Mm-hmm. It feels like the right has been way more successful at that in terms of getting the people in and pushing what they want to push. Mm-hmm. And particularly around Trump and the 2020 election, there really was this effort to rally what I'm going to describe and others describe as the Obama coalition to come to the table and bring it on home once again. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's happening this time, Aimee. Yeah. I think people are like, no, we're not.
We're in like a chickens coming home to roost kind of moment, because it's like, you're right. In all these past elections, we had kind of like a boogeyman that they could use to be like, if you don't do this, something horrible will happen. But at this moment in time, we are seeing lots of horrible things happening, even in spite of all the effort that we made in those previous elections. And so people are starting to feel like, wait a minute, there's a bit of hypocrisy here, or a lot of hypocrisy here. And also, who can I turn to in this moment? Which is fair, because, we're all seeing the same thing. It's wild out here. And almost no one is giving people reassurances that make sense.
Yeah, and part of it is because what would the reassurance be? Look, I was talking to someone, and they were saying, again, because this Trump boogeyman, though he has 91 felony convictions not convictions, not quite convictions. Charges between like 5 jurisdictions or something. That, people are like, oh, we don't want him to get into office. We don't want him to get into office. I mean, let's pull the car over to the side for the moment. The fact that people are still afraid, rightfully so, that this man can get into office is itself a show. That's a story in and of it, right? But people are trying to still push, including the Biden-Harris administration, focusing on presidential for a while, this idea that, hey, if you don't vote again in this Biden, for Biden-Harris this time around, that you're going to be screwed and that you're going to end up getting this Trump, and it's such a big, trauma. But I'm like, the lesser of two evils, when one is, all that Trump is, which is too long to list all of the things, right. And the other is like a genocider who has filled all of the prisons with more people than have ever been in federal prison before, filled the detention centers or detention prisons with more migrants. You know what I mean? It's like hard.
Also, just did not follow through on some of the biggest issues that I feel like people would change their like material conditions in their life. And those are the things that people are looking at. You can say all day long, like, we built all these roads, we did all that. And that's important, obviously, for the infrastructure of a country. But if you talk to a human person who's just like a regular, every day I'm going to work, I'm trying to live my life, they're not thinking about that all the time. And what they are thinking about is, why am I paying $10 for a pack of eggs? And why is my rent so high that I can barely afford to make it at this point? And I have to move in with my cousin or my uncle or my aunt or my mother or whoever. Why has... And nothing else has changed. Like, my job hasn't gotten worse or better. Maybe I lost my job, but if I still have my same job, why is that money not going where it needs to go? Why did you tell me that you were going to cancel my student loans and I'm still over here paying them? Why? Why did you tell me that if I vote for y'all, y'all will protect reproductive rights in this country. And then I watched it happen where they were not protected. And now we're sitting here trying to figure out how we're going to protect it state by state. That kind of stuff is what people are actively dealing with every day. That is the hypocrisy of this like neoliberal moment that we are in. And I don't know how exactly we're going to get to the place where we can get people back to feeling the power of voting. But I do think that like the way to do it is not to say, if you don't do this, a terrible thing will happen. Because the reality is people will turn around and be like, well, the terrible thing already happened. So like, then what? Then I don't do anything because you have taken all my power that I even thought I had away, instead of saying, we have an opportunity to rebuild a world that we want to see, and here's how I plan to do it. Now, I mean, that would, to me, make sense in terms of like how I want to run a campaign, how I want to get people to turn out to vote for me, because you can't take people's vote for granted, which is what Democrats traditionally do. And you also can't leave people in a place where they have no options whatsoever.
Yeah, a couple of things pinged to me. Number one, I think that, you're dead straight on with respect to how people feel like their vote and why people feel that their vote really doesn't matter. And, people forget about the millions and millions of people that already do not vote in this country. And what we talk about, whether it be with Baji, I know y'all with Working Families Parties, like, how do we get those people to decide that they want to engage this electoral system, right? Because we know it's not a system. No one's saying it's a microwave system where you just put the thing in and then all of a sudden you're supposed to get everything that you want. But it's hard when the people who actually do engage in this process, whether they do so gleefully or holding their nose, are not seeing the results of that, right? Not seeing the benefits of that. It's hard then to try to pull other people in.
Truly.
And so, I think the frustration factor there is one that maybe the Dems, in terms of Dem leadership, are not really understanding, number one. And I think the second thing that came to my mind was when, in fact, the, Biden-Harris administration did come into office, and the emails that I was receiving, just as ED of Baji, that were like, we did this, or I did this, my administration did this, my campaign did this, that really made it seem as if it was Biden that turned out all those people, that it was Biden that, was so fabulous and enthralling that, made all of these people stroll to the polls, etc., and really a downplaying of the way that we, and I'm going to include myself because Baji was engaged in civic engagement work, had to drag people with mask and PPE to the polls to get them to vote. It's like, we did all of this work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Part of the work that we did was listening to people in our community, talking to people in our community, figuring out like, what are the things that you want to see and how can we get you to that place? And then having to make this like, intellectual leap with them of, if you do this in this moment, we can move ourselves forward in a way where we can actually accomplish those goals. Now, for the Biden-Harris administration, what they are clearly doing, like you said, like they're taking it and say like, Biden did this, Biden did that. He brought all these people. He's like the great next thing, the great white hope. No, absolutely not, sir. And you're right. By saying that, you're discounting all of the work that all these people have done, all of the work that people have done, period, in order to like make it possible for people to envision a future, and instead putting it all on a person who is disappointing. That doesn't help.
It doesn't help. And so let's connect this with the voter suppression work. I, for 4 years, have been trying to figure out, so when does the DOJ get in this?
Yeah.
Right. We see all of these voter suppression laws happening throughout the South, throughout the Midwest, that are really holding back and suppressing the votes of the very people that the Dems need to get in, to get their votes. It's like, okay, if there's one polling place in this whole county, and this happens to be the county with the people, with the Black folks or the people of color or the youth or whoever it is that they need in order to get, people elected. I'm just wondering, like, why is there not a aggressive effort on the part of the DOJ to go after those people? I mean, they'll say that they don't have the capacity, but it's like the NAACP Legal Defense Fund does not have the capacity of the U.S. government. Advancement, Project does not have the capacity of the U.S. government. The ACLU, like all these other organizations that seem to be going to court to fight voter suppression, they don't have the force and funds of the U.S. government. So
Not
why
even
has the U.S. government not been engaged?
Exactly. Isn't the responsibility of civil society to take that on when the reality is the actual government that we are trying to protect by allowing people to have the opportunity to vote? That should be the number one on their list. Like, we want to get people in there and have them successfully complete this project instead of making it more difficult, because what that tells me is that you don't want me to vote. And I feel like that's probably the wrong thing that you want people to be hearing if you want them to turn to vote.
Absolutely. Like, I'm like, I don't understand. You are saying the same thing that we're saying. I'm really interested in what's going to happen with this Eighth Circuit decision that only concerns the Eighth Circuit. Luckily, not the whole country, but, it states that, and some of the states are states that Dems are trying to vie for. And they basically, that court, appellate court, has said, hey, you are not able as an individual or as an organization to file a lawsuit to assert the rights to vote. It must be the DOJ. And I'm saying, well, then you in trouble if it's going to be the DOJ, because the DOJ ain't doing that. That's not what they're here for.
No, the question remains, what are they here for?
Yeah. And I think that's problematic. And I know, some people are saying, well, the DOJ is independent of the president. Look, don't get things confused. Nobody is saying that Garland should be the personal attorney for Joe Biden. We understand. We're not trying to do that repeat of the Trump thing, okay? But the DOJ is supposed to be fighting for, quote unquote, the people of the United States of America. And the right to vote, you would think, would be a fundamental right that they would want to push.
It's something that should absolutely be protected by everyone who is in elected office. Everyone, not regardless of party. Like, that's something that ideally is something that is important to everyone. It's clearly not. I mean, or it is important, but it's important in a way that limits the vote to people. Which, if that's the project, if that's the intention, then they're doing a great job. And, kudos, because, we got people over here. We are currently redrawing the maps right now in Georgia because they were deemed to be unconstitutional. It's December.
Right. And,
this place is, I live in Georgia. This place is wild, but it's not unique to the country. Like, this is happening all over the country, state by state. People are dealing with new laws that are limiting the ways that people can vote. People are dealing with, like, polling places closing and changing and moving around. My polling place, in fact, just moved, and today is election day. And people are dealing with, other restrictions that are limiting their ways to access the ballot. And, as we move closer to this, like, very big election year, people are going to come out of the woodwork talking about, like, we care so much, we're doing our best, like, we have to fight hard, and we have to, like, show them that we can do this. And it's like, why don't you show me that you have an intention behind what you're doing, instead of making it just one more thing that you're using as a tool to push people to vote? I want to see the opposite. I want to see this thing being pushed as a thing that's important to all of us. And then when it comes time to vote, people are able to do it without question.
Absolutely. Thinking of reproductive rights. And thank you for adding sort of where they should be looking, what they should be thinking about, because I'm hoping that this conversation is one that, you get some juices flowing with the folks that are listening. Maybe a couple of those folks may know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that can drop this in a DNC somebody or somebody left. Because again, I see a lot of problems there. Reproductive rights. Now, I remember when, of course we all do, when you had the Dobbs decision, Roe was overturned, something that people had been talking about happening for a long time. So this should not have been a total shock to the system, maybe unhappiness, but not a total shock. And then I remember, the Biden administration and others in elected office talking about how much they were going to protect these reproductive rights. And, I would say the same in terms of trans rights, right? Folks like really stepping up. But I didn't see any Ruby Bridges of those situations, right? And so, when I was thinking about, and I've even asked folks when I was able to be in those sort of spaces that are in higher levels of the DNC and in the administration, okay, so what's the plan? Like if someone needs to leave a state to go to another state and they don't have the capacity to fly, they need to drive through, are they going to get, there's some Ruby Ridges thing that's going to happen, like the dramatic, visible public support for this right that the Ruby Bridges, the Little Rock Nine, right? Those images of like National Guard. And that's what I was looking for. Literally, are you going to have this clear, visible federal protection of a person who is going to get an abortion or of a trans person who is going to get health care? Like, are you going to do that? And they were like, nah, like that's not what we're looking to do at all. And I'm thinking, well, then how's this going to work? And,
Right.
People are getting prosecuted. People have been prosecuted. People are going to prison. While we see nothing happening that visibly shows that, hey, this is the position that we're taking. I'm talking about from the local to the federal level by people who said that this was these rights, whether it be, reproductive rights, whether it be trans rights to healthcare, that these rights were critical and they believed in them as, human rights and constitutional rights. I don't see anything happening, but, maybe, Aimee, I'm not looking everywhere.
No, I think you're looking exactly where you need to be looking, because they were important rights to be used as like a cudgel, but were they important enough to actually defend? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, even when Roe v. Wade existed for us, we already know that actually accessing abortion was incredibly difficult for a huge swath of communities across the country. People did have to travel from state to state in order to get this done. People did have to risk all kinds of things. People actually still weren't being prosecuted for violating the random ass laws that existed around all this stuff. So nobody was looking out to protect those people on the state level, on the national level, on the municipal level. I have yet to see any of that kind of work. So you're right. Like, where's the indication that this is important? Other than when it comes time for you to call people out to come to vote, you say, this is important to you. Like, that it's important to me, and therefore you say it out loud. But I have yet to see the push behind it.
And so on that particular issue, what could electeds be doing? Like, for folks like you and I, and, we're talking this through, right? But it's like, how do they show something? I mean, is it in actually having those, the public thing where they are supporting folks, showing up at a clinic and being there to make sure that people can get in with as little abuse as possible? Is it that they are really, speaking up, having public conversation about trans rights and what kinds of things can be done in order to protect folks, for example, from prosecution? What are the things that, they could be doing that they're not doing right now? Because I don't see anything happening. And as you pointed out, you're not seeing anything happening either. But, 2024 is around the corner. Can they save themselves in this area for the people who this is their single issue?
I mean, I do think, I always am hopeful that everything can be saved. I wouldn't even be doing my job if I didn't believe that was the case. But I do think that it's going to have to be a combination of those things. Because if you just have one instance of people being like, I'm supporting this one person and I'm helping this one person do this thing, then that obviously just feels like lip service. Like, you're not actually doing anything. You're just, making a show. But if you pair that kind of work with actually having public conversations about these issues with folks in the community who are being affected, if you actually show people that you are actively working on legislation that can change things for these communities, absolutely. Then now we're in the place where we can like move towards getting people to feel like confident in the government again. And I feel like that's the part where people really need to focus. People need to focus less on the like imagery of it all and more on the like authenticity of it all. Because, you know, if you look at the way like demographics are working out and like Gen Z, this huge population of people who are voting now, look at how they interact. Even if you just look, even if you don't care anything about like how people are showing up at the polls, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. If you look at how people are interacting on social media, you can get a sense of like how people actually want to be messaged to. And you're talking about a generation of people who have like experienced propaganda on a level that we did not have before because they have way more access to media than they ever did before. And there's new kinds of media that have like deep fakes and AI and all this stuff where it's hard to believe the things that you're seeing. And it's even harder to believe the things you're seeing when you're hearing things from people in charge and they're not actually doing the thing that they said they were going to do, or they're doing the exact opposite, or they're doing something that does not align at all with the values that they said they had. And so like that group of people, authenticity is the most important thing to them. They want to see a picture that has no filter. They want to see a person who's telling the truth. And I mean, that's not a wild concept, but it kind of is.
No, in the political world, it kind of is. And yeah, to your point, there is so much discussion now when you're looking at social media, and even I'm having like, you know, one-on-one conversations with folks or community conversations with folks and meetings, etc., where people are just alarmed at the way in which it appears that electeds are so ideologically misaligned with them, right? Yeah. And so obviously the biggest example is this genocide on Gaza. Like people have their mouths open. Like, okay, people this past weekend were in the streets. Weekend after weekend in this country, across the world. Shout out to Ghana, shout out to Jamaica, South Africa. Azania has been putting it down. They get the first shout out, you know? And so, you know, all over the world though, everywhere, people have been making it clear. But in, you know, looking back in this country, it's like people have been making it clear in all the major cities and in rural areas, like everywhere. I don't care if they only got 10 people in a little town, a village in the United States. They are pulling out their people. They got signs. They're making it happen. Children are traumatized and are, you know, joining their parents, not just because they dragging them, but they actually are having feelings about it themselves. And yet we find the U.S., you know, sending bunker buster bombs and talking about sending over millions of dollars on top of what already is being sent over. Come on now. It just seems, you know, just with that, let alone all the, you know, these other issues, whether it be voter suppression, whether it be the banning of books, whether it be police violence, whether it be reproductive rights, whether it be trans rights and other the rights of queer folks, whether people are feeling like, hey, we've been talking this way. We said we wanted this, and we're showing you with our feet, with our mouths, with our social media posts what we want. And these electeds seem to be doing something completely different.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like the elephant in the room is money. And that's what we're seeing the result of, because there's so much dark money in politics that actually is shifting and guiding these folks to make decisions that are not congruent with their own value systems, presumably. And the things that they're telling people when they're running for office, the things that people are asking them to do, it's opposite. And the reason why that is because they're getting so much money from these like lobbying groups, from these PACs that are guiding them to make these choices that are amoral and inhuman and wrong, quite frankly, like just period wrong. And I mean, until we're able to, until folks who are, you know, candidates or elected officials are able to like come clean and not accept money from people who they know don't have the right interests, we're going to keep seeing this over and over and over again, because there's only so many times you can tell me that you are this kind of person, you're a good person, you don't believe in genocide, and then you allow it to happen right in front of us. You can't have it both ways. You can't be one thing on paper and then be one thing in present. Like, that's not how anything works, ever. In politics, in life, in anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, not and have people feel like they should invest in you, which is what a vote is. A vote is an investment.
Yeah.
Right? It may not.
This monetary investment is more important to me than your human investment.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to say, right? It's a human investment. It may not be a money investment, but it's a human investment. And it's, folks need to understand that to demand the human investment when actually people are not getting a return on that human investment is a lot to ask of folks, speaking in capitalistic terms, right? There's a lot to ask of folks.
These capitalistic terms.
Exactly. That is the terms of elections in politics. Because I'm thinking about immigration policy. And again, we know who some of these folks are. We know what the center of the Democratic Party looks like and feels like. We know what the center left looks like and feels like. We know, what their views are going to be on things like enforcement, whether it be criminal punishment enforcement or immigration enforcement. We know that they're going to be pro-enforcement, right? And that if anyone needs to get thrown under the bus, it's going to be the people who are victimized by those systems in order for other things to happen. So you look at that when they were trying to do the continuing resolution, and they were like, oh, we want to get money for Ukraine. We want to get money for Israel. We want to get money for Taiwan. I think they just threw Taiwan in there to just make the Chinese angry. And I don't know that Taiwan was looking for anything, but okay. And then, but in exchange for that, we're willing to put $100 million into border enforcement that this administration claimed it did not want. Like, I get emails that say, we remember Trump was for the wall. You are following the wall. You are trying to put money towards the wall, whether it be them in Congress or the administration. Remember the Muslim ban. Literally, I got something like 2 weeks ago. Trump's Muslim ban was racist. Sir, you have an asylum ban that is in violation of international law. What are you saying? That is clearly racist because it did not apply to the Ukrainians and don't apply to them today.
Surely.
So what are we talking about here? And why are you thinking that we're supposed to just walk lockstep behind you when you're clearly, you want more cops when no one is even asking for more cops? No one has asked for a single more cop. This man literally, other than Eric Adams, this man is literally talking about more cops. No one wanted more people in federal prison, but there's more people than when the Biden administration started. No one wanted more people in immigration detention, but there's more people. Maybe the dark money people you were talking about, but it's a lot of us.
Each person is money, so yes.
We were not looking for that, And I, for me, I'm like, hey, there's a simple way to unravel that, which is to empty out these prisons. You're pardoning turkeys. It's been 4 years. You ain't pardoned a human. Where are the humans that are getting pardoned? Even with these new sentencing guidelines, they're just, it's amazing to me that we rolled in 2020 with that summer, the George Floyd, Breonna Taylor summer, where this issue was of such importance. It continues to be of importance to people on the ground, both on the criminal punishment enforcement and immigration enforcement side. And it's almost like after, all these promises were made, and it's like we're the joke is on us in terms of what actually is happening.
100%. I mean, and the joke is not even funny, because we're seeing like an increase in instability internationally, like across the world, we're seeing an increase in instability. We're seeing an increase in violence. We're seeing an increase in just everything that nobody wants. Like you said, all the things that we did not want, we are being handed it to us and being told that this is what we wanted, which is the part that is really infuriating. Is when I'm being told that these are the things that I asked for, or these are the things that should be important to me, because they benefit someone else. That's wild. That's wild.
It's a zoom I'm saying, okay, look, how is it that we are supposed to, it's like, don't pay attention to that. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. It's like, look over here. And this is what you should be focused on. Roads, bridges. I literally got an email talking about hashtag #MoneyBagJoe. Nope. Now, if you are not in the world of hip hop and culture, you don't know this, but there's literally an artist that has a similar, who has a similar name. And I was like, this man is not Moneybag Joe. First of all, you're a grown man. So I don't know why you're not in the entertainment industry. So I don't know why we're supposed to be calling you that. You're the president of a country. But beyond that, no one feels that way. I just said this on the show. If you are a person who is extremely wealthy, you don't feel like you've been pinched at all by these Dems and others, right? Who supposedly were going to pinch you for the benefit of the rest of us. If you are someone who has been doing okay, right? Mm-hmm. You are still a paycheck or two away from homelessness, right? And you are praying that you still have the job and your work continues, etc. You're not job hopping right now because you don't know where you're going to land. You try to hold on to what you got for dear life. Mm-hmm. If you were on the edge of it, being impoverished, which is most working class people, you are, or you're impoverished, you are in a worse situation than you were 4 years ago. You're not in a better situation than you. I don't want to quote that Ronnie Reagan, but you're not in a better situation than you were 4 years ago. And being told repeatedly that gas prices are down, like these indices that they're using now to try to tell us what we should be concerned about in terms of economics, is an example of what you're talking about. It's like, no, what I care about is, am I able to live anything close to what the vice president of Francia Marquez of Colombia calls the delicious life? Right. Or my life, gruel and Oliver Twist. Because if my life is gruel and Oliver Twist, you telling me that the gas prices are less, that just doesn't really mean that much.
No, it doesn't. You're right. Like, instead of getting pinched, we're getting punched, because you tell me the gas price is less. Great. I can't even afford to have a car anymore. So what does it matter to me if the gas is less? It doesn't help me. And I feel like that's not a unique situation for a lot of people right now. Like, we're being sold a dream that has never existed. I want the delicious life.
I want that delicious life too. And I want us to all have that delicious life. And I think about, when you think about the monies that they were talking about with respect to, and they're still talking about, by the way, because they still have another, we're going to shut down deadline coming up. And when you think about the monies that they were talking about sending to Ukraine, to Israel, to Taiwan, and to the border, and I just think about, like, how could those funds be used to keep that student loan debt from having to be paid for those, that's their struggle, right? How could it go towards those checks? Like, I don't understand how the check stopped. People are suffering from the effects of the pandemic. Why are people not still getting the money from the pandemic?
I mean, why are we cutting budgets for things like SNAP, food stamps, that elderly folks, children? People are literally starving, and you're telling me that we need to send money to Ukraine. I mean, that doesn't actually compute to me at all in terms of, like, the priorities of a government. And you're right, like, we have clearly a lot of money to move around. Like, the numbers that are being talked about are astronomical, but the priorities are out of whack entirely. based on like what we're seeing and hearing from folks in the world, in our world, and what they're talking about in these like beautiful rooms where they all have a delicious life.
Absolutely. Delicious life, delicious food, delicious everything. And, obviously, both of us, we're cool with sending support to other countries and helping people, particularly because this country is such an extractive country and takes away, etc. But that's not what this money is going for.
No, it's not.
It's going for war. It's going for genocide. It's going for walls. It's going for surveillance. This is what they're talking about. And
it's coming right back here in that form as well. Like if we're sending this money over to Israel so they can have increased their genocidal campaign and learn new ways of surveilling and murdering people. And then they go ahead and bring that right on back here. And then our folks learn how to do those things better. I don't want them to do those things better. I want them to do other things better. I want them to house people better. And I want them to feed people better. And I want them to give people better healthcare or any healthcare. I mean, so many folks are going around right now with zero access to any kind of preventative healthcare. That is unconscionable.
That is unconscionable. I mean, we have elders and people who are disabled who are literally in their own form of carceral system, right? That, because they are impoverished and generally they are, people of
color. If you're disabled, you're required to be impoverished in this country. Like there's no option for you otherwise.
And that's legislation that people should be working on. Like, look, we don't want people to be impoverished, period. We want to center the most vulnerable, the most marginalized, the most impacted, who would include folks who are disabled, would include Black folks, folks of color, migrants, etc. And it's like, that's not what's happening here. And therefore, we're getting the policies that we're getting. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about this, because here's a theory that I have. I have a theory I'm going to call it the theory of extremes, even though, of course, I don't think that our positions are extreme. But, let's just keep it within the elected politics frame, right? When I look over at the people who are so-called Republicans, what I see is that even though people try to act as if, or, when we have conversations and even with pundits, try to act as if they're all of one mind, it's clear they are not all of one mind. Like when you're actually, and this, in this legislative halls, talking to folks, etc., there are people that actually are center Republicans. There are people that are sort of center-left Republicans. And then there are people who are the fascists, right? And then there's all these people in between. But it seems like they've made an agreement that they know that the people who power on the ground, the humans, the constituency that powers the energy that, that builds the power they need to accommodate or accomplish certain agendas, that is the folks who are closer to the fascists. And so even if they don't all talk in the fascist talk, that they're going to be cool, roll with the fascist piece in the hopes that they can at least get some of their agenda done. And so everyone gets something on their plate, right? So as fascist as the fascists are, they do allow the center and the center-right people to get something every once in a while, right? They give them a chicken wing, they give them, half a yam, they give them something. Okay. So they feel like it's worth it to keep fighting, even for the fasci people, because they feel like they can get something from them, right?
Yeah, it is. It's true. It's a fear-based economy.
Right. On the other hand, when we look at those folks that are considered center all the way to, I'm going to say progressive, because, not necessarily revolutionaries in this conversation, right? We're talking about electoral politics. Yeah. They have that theory there is not to do what is quote unquote considered the extreme or the most progressive, right? The most left, right. And hope that, and then get everybody something on their plate. It's like, let us focus on the center and even look a little bit into the Republican Party, right? The center, the right, in order to make sure that all the center people get something on their plate. And then you people that are over here towards the left, between, the center left all the way to the progressive, y'all just need to get in where you fit in. And if you can get you a piece of, bread pudding, good for you. But we're not actually looking at how we can put stuff actually on your plate, not talkingly on your plate, because we'll talk the talk, right? But when it comes to the actual sit down legislation, it's like the progressives I feel like they're having to beg the other folks to at least give them a look, and they will put them under the bus at any time. I know
Mm-hmm.
a lot, but
I mean, I agree with you 100% that it's what we see all the time. And I do think that, like, both, while it might seem like they're opposite or opposing worldviews, they're both based in fear. Like, if you are on the more progressive side and you're catering to the center or the center right, in order to get people to, like, on any side, to put a little bit on the plate, to have a little bit, a hint of something on the plate. What you're telling me is I need to be scared. I need to be scared all the time that all the things that I barely have, I'm going to lose. And that is, for them, the motivator for getting people to turn out to vote. And on the other end, we have people who are saying, like, let's get as far right as we can go. And those folks will turn out because we've already scared them to death that they are losing everything, or they already lost everything, and they're going to lose more, whatever that is, to immigrants or black people or black immigrants. The scariest of them all.
exactly like the Africanized bees.
Hey.
No, no, you've hit on something right there, because I think you're right. It's like both of them are in this fear conversation, and we know, which sounds so corny, that the opposite of fear is love, but it is true. And it's what motivates us, right? It's like love for the people, love for justice, love for liberation. How do we get that sense into the folks that we are looking at? So I know, for example, with Working Families Party, it's like, yes, there are conversations with candidates, people are endorsed, et cetera, et cetera. How do you do that? How do you have this conversation that is not saying, hey, based upon fear, based upon, of not getting the money, right? Because that's how the dark money works, is because if you don't have as much money as the other person, you're not going to have as many ads. You're not going to have this. You're not going to have that. So then you're going to lose, right? So how do we get folks, candidates, electeds, and people that are out here, right? Because it's not just the electeds that are afraid. It's also people out here. That's why they're saying, Nana, you got to vote. You got to vote for this one. You got to vote for that one, or the evil monsters will get in, right? And so how do we get people off of that fear conversation? How do you all do that?
I mean, the way that we do it is exactly what you said, through love, love of community, love of each other, and pairing that with integrity and accountability. So, like, when we are identifying folks who want to run for office, when we're helping people campaign to run for office, when we're working with people who've already been elected and helping them figure out, like, how to actually govern, if it's the first time they've done it or the millionth time that they've done it, each individual instance of, like, the part of the process, you have to go into it with agreement that we love this community, we love this country, we love this city, we love this state, whatever it is, we love this school district. We have love for the people that we're working with. And then in order to demonstrate that love, we are going to write policies and act laws that actually support the people that we are coming in here to love on. And the way that looks is, you can't allow the fear of an election to rule how you govern. You have to be able to think, I got elected for this term. I'm going to be in this office for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, however long it is. And in that amount of time, what can I reasonably accomplish? Not what's going to happen when I run again. Because if you are working like that, then you will never get anything done. Because each one of these elected bodies, they operate like, it's like high school. There's like bullies, and there's like cool kids, and there's this and that. And so if you go in there, people are going to talk to you, and they'll say, like, you're new here, you don't really know how it works, so I'm going to tell you how it works. If you do this for me, I'm going to do that for you, and then everybody's going to get a little bit of something. That can be how you want to operate, but that is not operating with integrity or love for anyone other than yourself, quite frankly. So you have to like work with people to get them to understand that while you're being told one thing on the inside of this place, there's a whole world outside of it that you are a part of, and we set you there inside that place to do this work for us, because that's how it works. But it's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy for them. It's not easy for us as like people in the community. It's not easy for us at the Working Families Party who are like, trying to support people. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible. It just means that like we have to do the work of remaining in conversation with folks who are in office, and maintaining a level of love for them and for the work that they're doing. Because, these elected roles are service jobs at their core. And so, like, when people are doing a service, they want to feel like their work is being like respected. And if the only indication of that respect is through money, that's a failure. It's a failure on a lot of levels. And we will never be able to offer the amount of money that is going to come from these like dark forces. That is impossible. There's no such thing as that being a reality. And they have to go into it knowing that is true as well. Because nobody's going into this naive, we just came off the, we were literally born yesterday and now are in office. That doesn't happen. People know how the world works. They know certainly how the capitalist country that we live in works. And they know, what is coming at them. But they have to know that, like, if I deny this $1 million, $2 million, $10 million coming from this place where I know if I take this money, it's going to require me to do some things that nobody wants, including me. I know that if I don't take that, I'm going to be at a disadvantage because my opponent's going to get it. You have to be able to tell them that we will back you as the community. We will back you. We will give you the love and the support that you need. And the votes, we're still people. We still have all these people power with the votes. If you actually go in there with some kind of integrity and actually go in there with some kind of accountability, and one way to show that is to say no to this money. So maybe we start there. People saying no to the money.
Yeah, maybe we start there. I'm thinking about the folks who were running for senator in the great state of Michigan that were approached and offered like $10 million to run against Rashida Tlaib, and were like, nope. And then went on Twitter and let us all know, yeah, they offered me this money. And I was like, no, that's not what I'm doing here. And that's not easy. Like, we look at that and we can be like, yeah, that's great. But it's not easy to turn away $10 million or $15 million or $20 million, especially with these campaigns that cost so much money to actually be able to be in the fight.
Right, exactly. I mean, in some of those instances, that could have been like a guaranteed win, quite frankly. Like, let's squash this person and I can get the power, I can get control, I can do this thing. But that's a perfect example of people having a goal greater than just their immediate needs being met. That's a beautiful thing. And more people need to be doing those things, and less people need to be taking this secret money and doing these deals behind closed doors that jeopardize all of our lives.
Yeah, we need to get some more information on that secret money that folks have. I know there's plenty of people that are tracking and tracing and sharing that information, but looking, again, into 2024, really trying to see, how are we grading folks? I hate to use that term, but you know what I mean? Like, how are we looking at people and deciding? And I think the conversation around making sure that people are, living and doing and pushing policies that actually match up with what they told us that they were going to do is at least a good start.
Yeah, I agree. Follow the money.
Follow the money. Follow the money. Follow the money. Thank you so very much, Aimee. I really appreciate you. Appreciate this conversation. I'm hoping others do as well. We're going to have to follow up on the other side of the year. And, after folks have had time to breathe, think, see what's coming out of these local elections and what they're looking like. And then, we really got to get into it, whether it be Atlanta, in LA, Chicago, New York. I'm just naming major cities, Houston, but we know that there's other places as well. Yes, we've got, these local elections that are happening that are impacting our our lives on that level. And then, of course, we have statewide and we've got the federal coming. So we have a lot that we're going to have to swim through, and a lot of people we're going to have to push and have some conversations about their love,
right?
Their love factor and what that means to them beyond lip service, thoughts, and prayers.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate this conversation entirely because, I mean, when we started out talking today, we came into this thinking like people are afraid. It's like a miasma out here. It's like very difficult to understand like where you even can sit ideologically within this, like the chaos of what's going on. And so the only way we can get to the next place is by having these conversations, even if it's hard, even if we sound a little bit like we're all over the place and, we're like grasping, like maybe this, maybe that. But that's the only way that I know that we can actually move forward with love.
Absolutely. Rooted in love. Thank you again. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.